Elena pressed her fingertips against the reinforced glass panel, gazing at the raging sandstorm that blotted out the Martian horizon. It was remarkable how quickly a once-dead world had shaped itself into a second home, if one could call it home. Decades of technological breakthroughs had culminated in widespread terraforming operations. Skyscraper-like greenhouses bubbled with artificially germinated flora, while specially bred microorganisms worked tirelessly to convert the thin Martian atmosphere into breathable air. But the process had never been smooth, and the experiments had demanded more resources than anyone had anticipated. Still, the Human Mars Initiative pressed on, oblivious to the mounting crises boiling up from Earth. She remembered the days she left her birth planet behind. A cargo shuttle streaked upward from the crumbling cityscapes of old Chicago, carrying the last wave of skilled workers to Mars. A bold experiment, some had called it, but one fueled equally by desperation and ambition. On Earth, rising sea levels, extreme weather, and collapsing ecosystems made survival uncertain. Starvation and plague ran rampant, barely contained by overstretched governments and private relief organizations. By contrast, Mars promised a reset, fresh beginnings, advanced technology, and freedom from humanity's old burdens. Yet, beneath that red soil, secrets lay buried. The dust swirling outside Elena's window masked the towering spires of New Babel, the capital city built under climate-controlled domes. In principle, the terraformed environment underwent continuous calibration, nutrient-enriched soils for agriculture, carefully released greenhouse gases to warm the surface, and solar reflectors to maintain a stable climate. But something in the balance had shifted. Strange solar flares and geomagnetic disturbances disrupted huge swaths of the planet's electrical grid. Crops that once flourished in the artificially enriched fields now turned brittle. Agricultural yields plummeted, and the water sourced from the poles began evaporating at alarming rates. Elena was a terraforming engineer. She prided herself on being part of a project that had once been humanity's greatest success story. She often told her 7-year-old niece, Mina, that Mars was their new playground, their new dream. She hoped the child would never learn of the violent storms that threatened the pressurized habitats, or the mounting scarcity of the very oxygen they breathed. Working long shifts in the greenhouse towers, Elena tried to find a fix for the unexpected atmospheric variables. The official statements from the Martian Technocratic Council insisted that the disruptions were temporary anomalies, minor setbacks that would soon be resolved. But those of Elena's colleagues who remained honest spoke of a more systematic collapse. "Your presence is requested in Lab 7, came a voice through her earpiece. She left her apartment, a compact room with steel-gray walls, and navigated the labyrinthine corridors leading to their research wing. Overhead lights flickered, casting dancing shadows that reminded her of the flicker of Earth's last bonfires. Her mind drifted to the news she had received just the night before. Entire coastal regions back on Earth had vanished into the ocean. Despite Elon City's promises of earthquake-proof barriers, nothing could stop the sea from swallowing the remnants of once great metropolises. The cataclysm felt distant in one sense, over 54 million kilometers away, but each desperate transmission from Earth underscored that this entire Martian project might have been flawed from the start. She reached Lab 7 and keyed in her ID, stepping into a disconcertingly silent space, dominated by massive, transparent cylinders with small samples of Martian soil and root systems. Dr. Raphael Hugheshead of the Terraforming Task Force stood near the central console. His face, usually stern with discipline, now appeared haggard, accented by heavy bags under his eyes. "We have a problem," he said, his voice raw. "You know how the entire premise of terraforming hinged on a delicate cycle of artificially introduced bacteria, genetically modified algae, and then successively complex plant life?" Elena nodded, remembering how these steps had been heralded 2 decades ago as the final key to sustainable living on Mars. "Has it begun mutating again?" she asked. "Last year, certain strains of algae had mutated to feed on critical water reserves, draining them even as they produced oxygen, effectively robbing the planet of its precious resource from one side, while giving from the other." "Worse," he replied. "We're observing molecular breakdowns in the greenhouse bands, The microbes advanced faster than predicted, smart enough to adapt, but also changing the pH levels of Martian soil to the point of toxicity for the plants we designed. They're rewriting entire biological codes, generating toxins we can't neutralize. Elena leaned over a screen, scanning lines of data. Toxins? Are you talking about a planetary pathogen? It's not exactly a virus, Dr. Hughes clarified. It's an entire new arrangement of microbial life that thrives in the conditions we created. The outcome? A wave of biological sabotage across our crops. This is catastrophic, Elena. Food production is already down by 20% in subsector C. She glanced at a blinking red alert, accompanied by an algorithmic forecast chart. If these toxins multiply, they'll spread through the irrigation systems. We'll have famine within weeks, she said softly. And we can't import from Earth. We barely managed the last shipment of seeds before the global supply chain collapsed. Dr. Hughes offered a joyless grimace. We're on our own. Near the main gates of New Babel, a crowd had gathered by the arrival platform. They watched a supply vessel settle onto the tarmac, red dust swirling in its wake. From the vantage point of the watchers, the cargo might have been anything. Medicine, water, maybe fresh seeds to reinvigorate the half-dead farms. But it didn't carry salvation. Captain Lynn Duarte, one of the last Earth-based pilots who could still make the treacherous route, emerged with her small crew looking more ghostly than triumphant. Their craft was nearly empty. Everything that Earth had left to spare was negligible. The planet had become a graveyard, painfully bereft of surplus. Word spread quickly. Earth was out of resources, meaning Mars was effectively cut off. Tensions surged. Residents demanded answers from the Technocratic Council. Some declared the hidden stockpiles within the city's sealed-off sections were more than enough, if only the Council would distribute them fairly. Others insisted it was time to consider evacuating back to Earth. As impossible as that seemed, the city's synthetic environment began to crack under the weight of fear and desperation. In a dusty alcove near the arrival platform, Elena found Captain Duarte slumped against a crate, wiping the sweat from her brow. I want no part of what's coming, the captain muttered. I've seen Earth. There's nothing left. I never thought I'd say this, but Mars might be a kinder place compared to the planet we once called home. Elena knelt down. There's talk of riots. People are furious that the Council hasn't told us the truth about the scale of this crisis. Resources are vanishing. Above us, satellites keep failing. Our atmospheric stabilizers are on their last legs. Duarte eyed Elena carefully. You're part of the system, no? There was an accusatory edge to her voice, one Elena understood. Terraforming engineers were painted as both saviors and villains. They had shaped the Red Planet into something livable, but at a terrible cost. I wish it were simpler, Elena whispered. I'm not part of any shadowy conspiracy. I'm just trying to keep the oxygen flowing, the crops growing. But we do rely on a top-down approach to monitor conditions, and the Council decides what information we can disclose. The captain exhaled, pushing herself upright. Listen, I have to head back in a few days, one final run. In case it matters, I'd suggest you look at the rumor about a hidden facility about 50 kilometers east of New Babel. The place is labeled as a wind farm, but half the terraforming engineers from the early missions were reassigned there, off the grid. Elena's eyes narrowed. She'd heard allegations of secret labs, but rumor mills were always churning. Still, it was enough to plant a seed of suspicion, especially given the severity of what she was seeing in Lab 7. If the Council had embarked on some clandestine research, that might explain the anomalies knocking the planet out of balance. Elena's journey to the facility began under the glow of artificially bright streetlights that lined the exit of New Babel. She packed a small rover with survival gear, including oxygen canisters and a portable water purifier. The terrain outside the city was treacherous, rust-colored dunes, battered by howling winds and hidden craters that could swallow a vehicle whole. The storm had died down just enough for her to spot occasional breaks in the swirling dust, revealing jagged mountain ranges in the distance. She hadn't told anyone of her plan, though she suspected Dr. Hughes might guess. He had seemed resigned to the possibility that the real solutions lay in places unknown to the rank and file. If in fact the Council had a hush-hush installation designed to fix or exploit the planet's failing systems, Elena wanted to know. Her rover hummed across the desert for hours. Time blurred in the monotony of dust-saturated sky. She listened for signs of pursuit, scanning her rear cameras, but no signals appeared. At last, an imposing silhouette emerged, a cluster of tall, spindly structures like large metal wind turbines, their blades static in the near-breathless air. A perimeter fence enclosed the compound, topped with electrified wiring. Elena parked under a rocky overhang, stepping out cautiously. She approached the fence, scanning for an entry point. The gate was unmanned, locked by a biometric scanner. This was advanced technology, too advanced for a mere wind farm. She rummaged her pockets for a universal interface device, hooking it to the scanner. A few lines of code later, the lock clicked open. Inside, she saw few signs of life. A pair of rovers lay parked near an unmarked building, and large vats of what might have been chemical feedstock for greenhouse gases lined the compound. She slipped into the building, heart pounding. The corridors were eerily clean, illuminated by cold bluish lights. Deeper inside, she discovered an array of monitors and data readouts describing something labeled Project Helio. Pages of scientific notes scrolled on screen, referencing gene sequencing, hybrid microbes, and radiation-assisted evolution. Then she noticed the rows of pods, dozens of them, each a sealed glass cylinder with its own digital readouts. At first, she assumed they contained experimental plants or algae colonies, but what she saw shocked her. These pods contained human subjects in stasis, tubes running into their mouths, fluids swirling around their motionless bodies. "You shouldn't be here," said a voice from behind. Elena whirled around to see a tall man in a white lab coat. His ID patch read, Dr. Thompson. "You have no clearance for this facility." Elena took a step back, her mind racing with questions. "What are you doing to these people? Are they volunteers?" Dr. Thompson's hand darted reflexively to his waist, but he carried no visible weapon. "They knew what they signed up for," he answered. "We needed living subjects for advanced terraforming research, human physiology integrated with the microbial processes that adapt to Martian conditions. We call them hybrids, or the Helio strain. They might be our last hope." A horrified realization swept through Elena. "You're engineering humans to survive on Mars without normal oxygen levels, relying on mutated microbial life. That's monstrous. Why not share your breakthroughs to stabilize the environment for everyone?" He gave a bitter laugh. "We tried. The planet is changing faster than we can fix it. Earth is gone. Our only path forward is to evolve ourselves to match the new environment. The Council gave us this lab and these volunteers on the condition that it all remains secret. If the general population knew, the outrage would tear New Babel apart." Elena's chest constricted. She scrolled through the data on the screen behind her. The Helio strain was engineered to metabolize more carbon dioxide than any normal human, exhaling a steady stream of oxygen. They were living terraformers. But if you cause a large-scale mutation, you might unleash a biological hazard nobody can control. "We've contained them," he insisted. "We monitor every stage. They remain sealed until we can ensure success." "And what about the toxins that these mutated microbes are releasing across our farmland? We're all about to starve. Could this project have triggered that mutation? Science gone wrong? Interfering with the entire terraforming chain?" Dr. Thompson twitched. "We introduced specialized microbes into the environment as part of our field trials. We needed them to acclimate before merging with the new hosts. But yes, something spun out of control. We are close to refining the process, though, and the Helio strain could save us all." He stared at her with desperation. "We just need more time." A escalating hum echoed from deeper within the facility. Thompson's eyes widened. "Stay here," he commanded, and rushed off. Elena, ignoring him, crept after. She found a sealed hatch leading to an underground annex. Inside, The hum grew louder, a resonance of heavy machinery or perhaps a reactor. Scientists in matching white coats darted about with frantic expressions. In the center of the chamber stood an enormous cylindrical machine encasing a swirling mass of pinkish fluid. It pulsated and bubbled, the surface shifting with something alive beneath it. From a control station above, Dr. Thompson shouted, "The reactor is overloading. The microbial network is expanding beyond capacity." The pink mass expanded violently, cracking the cylinder. Shards of glass sprayed across the platform, and sirens pierced the air. A shapeless ripple of organic matter burst free, steaming in the sterile fluorescent light. Lab workers scrambled backward, but the mass oozed across the floor with terrifying speed, flowing around ankles and dissolving protective suits on contact. Within seconds, several researchers sank into the swirling mess. Their screams cut short as the cluster reabsorbed them, leaving behind only contorted silhouettes. Elena slammed her hand on the emergency override, sealing the hatch behind her. She spun the manual wheel lock, panting, heart pounding in her throat. In the corridor beyond, red lights flashed as an automated voice repeated, "Containment breach, evacuate immediately." She sprinted down the hallway toward the stasis chamber. One by one, the pods let out electronic wails. The meltdown in the reactor likely triggered fail-safes, and the helio-strained subjects were being ejected from stasis. Their eyes fluttered open, revealing an eerie glow. Some of them convulsed as they tore away from tubes and wires, their newly adapted lungs heaving in the Martian air. They looked at Elena, confusion etched across their pale faces, but also a hunger or a primal longing she couldn't describe. They advanced tentatively. She backed away, bracing for an attack, but one of them, a gaunt, bald figure, eyes luminous with unsettling brilliance, raised a trembling hand, as if seeking help. Elena spontaneously reached out. Their hand clasped hers, strangely warm despite the watery fluid lifting from their skin. She wondered if it was curiosity or desperation that drove them. She motioned for them to follow her. Their motley group limped through the corridors, sirens blaring overhead. Halfway to the exit, Dr. Thompson materialized, brandishing a small control device. "Stop," he shouted. "They're not ready to be free. Their metabolic processes need to be regulated to ensure stable transformations." Elena glared at him, glancing at the figures behind her. Some swayed on unsteady legs. Others simply stared blankly. The entire facility's architecture vibrated from the increasingly violent "Your reactor meltdown is going to kill everyone. Would you rather they die here, sealed in tubes?" Teeth clenched, he jammed a button on his control device, sending a shockwave through the corridor. The newly awakened subjects collapsed, racked with convulsions. Elena, too, dropped to her knees, fighting the wave of pain that rippled through her bones. This was some sort of failsafe embedded in the implant network, controlling the helio strain. Thompson advanced, his finger about to press it again, and then a deafening explosion rocked the facility. The corridor wall imploded. Clouds of debris and scorching air filled the passage. The pink, writhing mass from the reactor hammered through, unstoppable. Elena seized the distraction. She hurled a loose metal bracket at Thompson's hand, knocking away the control device. Then the seething flood of microbial fluid engulfed him. His shrieks were short-lived. She forced herself upright, ignoring the throbbing in her head. Around her, at least 4 of the half-human hybrids remained conscious. She grabbed 2, motioned to the others, and sprinted toward the nearest exit. The emergency lockdown doors slammed down behind them as they raced into the wind farm courtyard. The outside air hammered them with scorching gusts. The pink mass churned beneath the building, tentacles creeping through every crack. Elena recognized a meltdown beyond containment. If that substance reached the city of New Babel, it would likely absorb everything in its path. She herded the hybrids into the rover, struggling to find enough space. 2 clung to the vehicle's exterior. The engine sputtered to life and she floored the accelerator, putting distance between them and the facility as towers collapsed in fire and dust behind them. When they finally returned to city limits, the dawn lighting revealed the scale of a new crisis. Patches of farmland lay blackened with swirling pockets of noxious mist. At the gates, crowds battered against security forces, desperate for any morsel of food. Civilians with ragged clothes brandished makeshift weapons, and overhead, solar reflectors glowed faintly, a sign that the city's power reserves were running on fumes. Elena's rover pulled up near Lab 7. The half-human hybrids stared in awe at the city structures, partially automated rovers, and terrified citizens rushing around them. Timidly they emerged, clutching one another. Word spread rapidly. Strange beings had arrived from an off-limits site, living proof of the Council's darkest secret. Panic erupted, but Elena raised her hands to calm the onlookers. "They mean no harm," she shouted. "They're part of a terraforming experiment. Gone. Complicated. This is the Council's doing." Just then, Dr. Hughes emerged, eyes wide at the bizarre group huddled by Elena's side. "Elena, what on Earth? No, what on Mars have you brought back?" "A new chance," she said, her gaze flicking to the nearest hybrid. "They may be able to stabilize the environment, or at least offer insight on reversing the toxic spread. That was the Council's plan, wasn't it? It's just that no one told us about the catastrophic side effects, and the meltdown that's already started at the hidden facility." Staff from the lab swarmed around, scanning the hybrid's vital signs. They flinched at the medical equipment, uncertain but not violent. The one who had first reached out to Elena in the corridor spoke haltingly, mouth forming words as if foreign to him. "Help?" he asked, voice trembling. Suddenly, the city intercom crackled with a forced announcement. A council official's voice boomed. "Citizens of New Babel, remain calm. A minor accident occurred at the East Wind farm. Terraforming engineers are addressing it. Please remain in your quarters. Martial law protocol is now enacted." Before Dr. Hughes could respond, uniformed security squads marched into the square, weapons aimed at the hybrids. The crowd parted, gasping and muttering. Elena positioned herself between the soldiers and the new arrivals, arms outstretched. "No, they're not your enemy. The real threat is out there," she said, nodding toward the swirling clouds on the horizon, remnants of the meltdown. "If we don't work together, the toxic wave will reach us soon." A tall security officer lowered his visor, glancing from Elena to the hybrids. "Our orders are to contain them," he growled. "Hand them over, or we'll open fire." Dr. Hughes stepped forward. "Wait. The heliostrain might be the key to reversing the toxins. We can't destroy them." The officer was unmoved. Just as his finger tightened on the trigger, an even darker cloud enveloped the eastern gate. The wave of pinkish land spread advanced, unstoppable, devouring the metal outpost and the fence in seconds. Panic screams sliced through the air. Everyone spun around to see security officers stationed at the perimeter vanish under the toxic mass. The meltdown had arrived at the city outskirts with frightening speed. Elena seized the moment. "We have to let the hybrids do what they were designed to do, or we all die anyway." In a chaotic flurry, Dr. Hughes guided the hybrids to portable labs, hooking them up with specialized detection gear. The rest of the population scrambled for higher ground or boarded shuttles that might carry them anywhere but here. As the pink rot seeped through the streets, entire buildings caved in. The city threatened to become an enormous feeding pool. Inside the lab's shielded dome, the hybrids moved as if guided by instinct. Heart rates soared to inhuman levels, and a faint glow radiated from their skin. Elena monitored the readouts. Oxygen production soared in microbursts around them. They coughed violently, spitting out thick fluid that crystallized on contact with the toxic microbe. Something in their mutated saliva neutralized the wave, forming a barrier or ring around the immediate area. The meltdown advanced, yet each time it touched the crystallized barrier, it hissed and retreated. "See?" gasped Elena in amazement. "They can hold it back, but not for long." The hybrids screamed, voices melding with shrill echoes. More fluid poured from their mouths, eyes glowing. They sank to their knees, focusing all their mutated physiology into reversing the meltdown's spread. Outside, swirling toxins collided head-on with the crystalline ring forming on the perimeter. Blocks of the pink monstrosity hardened and shattered. Dr. Hughes hammered at his console, capturing data. "Yes, they're generating an anti-agent. scattering the microbial chain reaction, but it was clear the hybrids were suffering. One collapsed, chest rising and falling, as if breathing an alien atmosphere. Another coughed up blood-tinged fluid. Their luminous eyes grew dim, and they convulsed under the strain. Elena rushed to them, tears streaming down her face. "They're giving everything to save us," she whispered. "We never should have created them to bear this burden alone." In a grueling standoff that lasted what felt like hours, the meltdown tide gnawed at the city's edges. Structures crumbled, people fled or cowered in sealed corridors. Then, at last, the invasive wave slowed, quivered, and dissipated into small pools that hardened like brittle coral. The pinkish glow faded to a dull gray. New Babel's survivors emerged tentatively, staring in equal parts horror and awe. When Elena stepped back inside the dome, the hybrids lay motionless, their bodies cold, eyes vacant. One stirred slightly, the same one who first asked for help, managing a faint smile before succumbing to silence. Elena held his limp hand as a hush fell over the lab. The meltdown had been arrested, but at a devastating cost. In the aftermath, the city reeled in the face of staggering loss. Entire neighborhoods had collapsed, and thousands of refugees huddled in the few stable corridors. Dr. Hughes compiled the data gleaned from the hybrid's heroic final act. An antidote to neutralize the toxic microbes would take time and resources to manufacture, but it offered a glimpse of hope. The city's leadership was in disarray. Under intense public pressure, half of the council members resigned or vanished outright. Some called for new governance. Amid the wreckage, Elena found herself standing by the dawn-lit crater where farmland had once stood. She held a simple device containing the genetic formula derived from the Helios strain. This blueprint could reseed the environment safely, forging a new cycle of plant growth without unleashing more horrors. Earth, as far as she knew, had slipped beyond rescue. Mars had nearly followed suit. Perhaps, after all the deception and tragedy, they had a chance to forge a more transparent, accountable civilization, free of the Council's secret experiments. There, in the cool Martian morning, she felt an unexpected surge of resolve. The memory of the hybrids born into secrecy, forced to sacrifice everything, reignited her commitment to protect life at all costs. She swore their sacrifice would not be in vain. Rebuilding would demand unity. No more top-down technocratic rule, no more illusions. If Mars was truly humanity's next chapter, it had to be written in cooperation and empathy, lest they repeat the mistakes that had driven Earth into ruin. At the horizon, the faint sunrise illuminated the half-shattered skyline of New Babel. Steeling herself, Elena turned toward what remained of the city, armed with the knowledge to heal the planet's wounds. She could imagine a day when this red soil might truly bloom, not under a veil of secrets, but through shared effort. Mars had ascended, bearing the scars of a flawed mission. Now came the final countdown, an opportunity to salvage what was left and forge a future worthy of the price so many had paid.